Hello and welcome to the Gospel and Grounds podcast. My name is Jeremy. I am a church planter and a pastor, and I'm here with my good friend Brandon Bauer, who is a pastor and a theologian. And this podcast is about drinking hot coffee and talking about hot topics that affect you and the church, the Bible, and theology today. Let's jump in.
Well, good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Brandon. How are we this morning?
Oh, doing swell. It's been a crazy week.
It has been a crazy week. That's for sure.
Yeah, you've done a lot for Evergreen, haven't you?
I have. I actually got to pitch the church plant for our sending church this week. And in the next couple weeks, I will be going for my final church planter assessment to see if I am up to snuff.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what happens.
I'm feeling pretty confident.
That's good. All right. You made some coffee this morning. Tell us about what you made. It's been pretty good.
Yes. So this is from Fabula, not a local coffee company.
Okay.
But I have a Fabula subscription, not a sponsor, but they can be if they would like to be. So Fabula makes a cleaner cup of coffee. They use single origin, primarily sourced from high altitude regions in Peru. You'll find a smooth classic note of caramelized sugar, roasted nuts, and rich chocolate. It's also low acidity, mold and mycotoxin free. Mycotoxin?
I have no idea.
Something free. Certified USDA organic, non-GMO, fair trade, certified 100% specialty grade Arabica bean coffee.
Very nice. Very nice. It's been good. I've had 2 cups. I don't know.
Yep, I usually have 2 cups.
Yeah.
Sometimes 3.
Sometimes 3.
Sometimes 4.
Sometimes 4. Nice. Oh, this is pretty good. Pretty good coffee this morning. All right. So for our, what is this, the 3rd episode?
Technically, this is our second
episode. That's
episode.
Right. Yeah. Second episode. We're going to dive into theology. We've got a nice little title for it.
Yes. This is Theology 101.
Yeah.
And our first topic is what we are calling theology proper.
Theology proper. I remember taking Theology 101 in school and being absolutely terrified of it. Because there's 2 big classes when you're going through the ministry degree, and the first one was Greek, obviously.
Right.
Which I don't know why it scared me so much. I'm actually going through, I'm doing like Greek stuff on my own, and looking back, I'm like, why was I so scared? Like, this is fun. It's hard, but it's fun.
Yeah.
But the other one was theology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big thing about theology was it kind of felt like this really heady,
right,
just, like deeply academic thing that I was never going to understand. But that's not really theology, is it?
No. You see, yes, the regular Joe on the street, Joe Q Christian, thinks that theology is only for the halls of academia. But really, everyone is a theologian. Everyone has a theology of something. Any statement about the nature of Jesus or God is a theological argument. Even if it's, I don't believe there is a God, or I don't believe in Jesus, you are still practicing theology while you're saying those things.
That's right. And the word theology comes from the Greek word theos and the other word ology, which means the study of. So it is the study of God, because theos means God in Greek. And I think that's where the confusion kind of comes in, is because when people see theology, they think of like biology. Well, it's when you're studying. It's the academic, rigor of it's like a biology class.
Right.
But in reality, I love the quote from A.W. Tozer when he says is it the which book is it?
Pursuit of God, I think.
Is it Pursuit of God? Or is
I
it
think.
Knowledge of the... probably should have looked that.
You keep going, and I'll
probably should have looked that book up. But A.W. Tozer says that the most important thing about us is what we think of God. And what we think of God, that is theology, like you said.
Yes.
And so if that, based off of his logic, if that's the most important thing about us, then theology is a really important thing for the Christian in particular,
Yeah.
because the way we view God is the way we relate to him.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we relate to him might even be the way we relate to other people.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like stumbles out. But then there's also the side of people who aren't Christians,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that people who aren't Christians think and view of God determines a lot of how they view the world.
Yeah.
Even if they think there is no God, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
there's still that still has a whole like dynamic that plays into their whole life.
Yeah. And you were right. It is knowledge of the holy.
Knowledge of the holy. Whew. Okay.
Yeah. So to your point, so the goal of this series that we're stepping into, where we're going to work through theology, is not necessarily to teach you how to start doing theology, but to do it well rather than poorly. And this first episode, we're not even really going to talk about Jesus a whole lot, because what we're going to talk about is just the theology of a divine, intelligent creator. That
Ooh.
yes, that what we are, what we do, how we live is not coming from nothing. That it is intentional, and that there is something bigger than us.
Yeah, I think in most, I guess in most circles, this would be considered falling under what's called apologetics.
Mm-hmm.
Can you briefly explain what apologetics would be?
Yes, apologetics is simply making a rational, logical argument for the existence of God or Jesus, or the case for Christianity.
Yes, I like that. That was very academic, even though we're trying to make this.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Well, I think one of the biggest things that ends up happening when we talk about apologetics and we see people talking about apologetics, number one, I think I've been honestly a little allergic to apologetics because I feel like it can be Christians kind of being angry at non-Christians.
Well, and the fact is, we mentioned this before, like if you can be argued into belief in God, then you can be argued out of belief in God.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
But apologetics are useful for those of you who do believe in God, because it's Peter that says we need to have an answer for every question that comes to us about our faith.
Yeah, for the hope that we have.
Exactly. So we do need to be prepared to articulate why we believe what we believe, even if the point is not to convince someone, but to explain ourselves in a way that shows that we have done the research.
Right. I think of this is not, a lot of people talk about, and I'll just kind of honor my wife, but a lot of people say that my wife is a very peaceful person. And she is a very peaceful person, but I think a lot of that peace comes from the Holy Spirit.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when someone comes up to you and says, man, you just exude joy, that moment is where you can, thank you for noticing that, but that joy doesn't come from me.
Right.
Because if left to my own devices, I would be, and I know for me especially, left to my own devices, I'm anxious, I overthink, I worry. So the moment that I'm able to have a non-anxious presence, I know that that's the Holy Spirit taking over. But I think, I think it's good that we view apologetics in this way of like allowing people to ask questions and then just kind of giving space to work towards an answer. And less about, we're not trying to argue in, but more about, well, let's just open up the conversation. Let's just some things that we've seen. So I think one of the big things, we've talked about this a lot when it comes to talking about the Bible, and I've heard you say this when talking about the book of Genesis. And you said the book of Genesis is not a science book.
Not a science book.
However, I think our culture today, they want proof.
Yes, they want empirical proof.
Yes.
That this modernist demand for physical evidence before believing. But, the empiricist's main argument is against faith. But The
Okay.
problem with that is that we all use faith every day.
Define faith.
So faith is, trust in something. Like
Okay.
you have a cup full of hot coffee.
I do. Well, it might be a little chilly now, but
Well,
you know.
But you have faith that when you pick up that coffee cup, the coffee is not going to pour out the bottom.
That's correct. Yeah. And that the cup doesn't fall apart.
Yes. I am sitting in a chair.
Yep.
I have faith that this chair is going to hold my weight
Yep.
and not collapse under me.
Yep.
I have lost some weight, by the way.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm down like 25 pounds. believe it or
Nice.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we walked into this room, we turned on this computer and we had faith that it was going to turn on
That's right.
and we were going to be able to use this equipment today.
Yep.
So the difference is the object of the faith. The believer trusts in a divine being while the empiricist trusts in five senses that can be fallible.
Okay. Nice. And so, okay. Where do we go from here? Because I still
Yes.
I can still hear people saying, all right, but I still want proof.
Well, so there's two ways to look at this. There's
Okay.
the presuppositional reasoning person.
Okay.
So that would be a person who looks at the truth of Scripture, like in Romans 1, that God has already made himself known to all. And these are the people that I grew up with in the Pentecostal church that says, the Bible says it, I believe it. Right?
Okay.
But then you have the natural reasoning people. And these people, you need to walk through the natural reasoning and classical arguments of the existence of God to reach a conclusion.
Okay. All right. So we're not going to be presupposing.
We're not. Because this is important. This is
Yeah.
important. We believe in the Bible because we believe in the God of the Bible.
Okay.
The Bible
Break that down.
The Bible can't come first because if we're basing all of our faith on the Bible, it's going to let us down because the Bible points to God. So our faith has to rest in God that then can rest in Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
that then can rest in the disciples who wrote the Bible.
Okay. I feel like that might be a strong opinion for some people. I hold the same opinion. I should say that, but
Yeah.
I want to, I always just like not playing the devil doesn't need an advocate, but you know what I mean?
Of course not. Yeah.
But the idea of, I feel like a lot of people would be like, well, hang on. Why do people care about the Bible so much then?
Well, and hear me. We love the Bible.
Oh, yes.
We trust the Bible. We think it is God-breathed. We
Yep.
think it's inspired. We think it's infallible. But our faith is not in the Bible because the Bible does not save you. Jesus saves you.
That's right.
And Jesus is God.
That's right.
So we have to have faith in the God who inspired the Bible more than the Bible itself.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that. I think it was honestly you who brought that up to me the first time, and I'd never really thought about it because I kind of grew up in that same, presupposing, well, the Bible says it, so I believe it type of thing.
Yes.
And then you said, well, we don't just trust in the Bible, we trust in God. And because we trust in God and because we trust in Jesus, that's why we trust in the Bible. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep, that is correct. But I feel like that's a challenge to a lot of...
It is because, the Bible is something tangible. You can put your hands on it.
Yes.
You can read it with your eyes.
Yep.
If you really want to, you can put it up to your face and smell it. You can even taste it if you want. Yeah, and it's a little weird.
Bibles do have a smell, though.
They do have a smell. And it's a smell I'm very fond of, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
If I could...
It's like that new book smell, but it's a different new book smell.
It is. I think it's the really thin pages.
Yeah.
If I could bottle that and put it in one of these air fresheners I have around my house,
Yeah.
I would definitely do that.
Yeah, that's
my
true.
wife would probably hate it, but I love you, Mary. But yes, it's while God is more abstract. He's a being that we cannot taste or smell or touch, at least on this plane of existence.
Yeah.
So it's harder to say, well, I believe in this being God more than I believe in this being the Bible. And hear me, you should believe in the Bible 100%. And we're not saying there's anything wrong with the Bible.
No.
Once again, let me be perfectly crystal clear. Infallible, God-breathed, inspired work, okay? What we're saying is you have to have more faith that God exists than you do in the book that tells you he exists.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the whole empirical proof because we are children of the Enlightenment.
Yes.
And I think even in the church, we still, even if we don't say it, I think there's a part of us that still wants that physical proof.
Oh, 100%.
And so I do think, I mean, what I've seen is, there's almost this idolatry of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with, we talked about last week about the historicity of the Bible.
Yeah.
And why we can trust it as a document itself.
100%.
And so we obviously love the Bible, but there is this reality, I think, that so many people, because it is physical and because we are children of the Enlightenment and we do want that empirical proof, that we look at the Bible, and because of the Bible, we're like, all right, okay,
Yeah.
God exists.
Yeah.
But I think what we're trying to say is like, well, okay, hang on.
Yep.
That can help you, but we need to have more faith in God himself,
Right.
instead of this book,
Yep.
or this collection of scriptures.
100%. Because the evidence of God doesn't rest on the Bible. The Bible rests on the evidence of God.
Right. Okay, so let's just jump in. You mentioned some classical arguments.
Yeah, so the 5 classical arguments for God's existence. The first one is what's called the cosmological argument, or the first cause argument. Now, Brandon, I do have to say that in the 90s, I was deep into that super weird 90s Christian subculture. Do you I know you're about 10 years younger than me. Are you familiar with the 90s Christian subculture?
Because my like youth group culture, we were like, we got the like the dust of that, like the remnants, because my youth pastor grew up in that, was
Right.
becoming a youth pastor during that culture. So
So did you have the shirts that looked like they said Reese's, but they really
Yes.
said Jesus?
I never had those personally, but man, were they alive and well.
Or looked like they said Sprite, but they really said
Yes.
Spirit? And you had up your arms the frog bracelet, the WWJD
Yes.
bracelet, the push bracelet, all that stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but I had a shirt that had an amoeba and a chimp and a human on it. And
Okay.
said, humanity evolved over thousands of years, blah, 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 blah. And then on the back it said, on the top it said, I believe in the Big Bang Theory, humanity. And then on the back it said something like, false. God spoke and bang, it happened. And, as I'm sure someone created that t-shirt in the 90s and thinking like, man, this is so clever.
This is so clever.
This is going to be like, oh man, such a misdirect, whatever. Actually, the fact that there is evidence, oh man, don't just take a second there. The fact that there is evidence of a Big Bang,
Yep.
and not that the universe has always existed, is actually one of the strongest arguments
Yep.
for the existence of a creator.
Yeah, what's really funny about this is I've talked to some people who have said, what do you do with the evidence of the Big Bang? And I said, okay, what evidence are you talking about? And most of the time they talk about, well, it's been proven that our universe is expanding, and it is expanding from one spot. And I was like, that's actually great. I said, I have no issue with the universe expanding. What it does show is that our universe it started somewhere and it's expanding out, and that's great. That doesn't disprove God.
Not at all.
I
Not
think
at all.
I had when I was in high school, I had you talk about the little Christian subculture thing. I had a friend in one of my classes who was a staunch atheist, and he found out I was a Christian. And honestly, we were really good friends, but he would joke around with me all the time about faith issues and stuff. But one of the things that I remember seeing a sticker on a guitar case that said, I believe in the Big Bang Theory. God said bang, and there everything was. And I remember sending a picture of that to him, and he just laughed at that, and he said, that's not true.
Yep.
But it is interesting because I think a lot of people would assume, and I think this has been a thing within the Christian culture, that we're completely against science. That we talked about empirical proof before, but I think what happens is that some people just kind of associate the fact that, oh, well, okay, you're a Christian, so you just kind of turn off your brain.
No, not at all.
And that's just not true, because I'm very interested in the science behind behind our world. It's interesting to learn that our universe is expanding the way it is.
Yeah, and I feel like that science and the Bible are not in opposition to one another.
I don't think so.
I think if you really look at science and you look at the Bible, I feel like science proves the Bible more than it disproves it.
Well, and then you look to the history of scientists who've made amazing discoveries, and how many of them were Christians.
Yeah.
And that didn't fight with their faith. They were a phenomenal scientist who wanted to find empirical proof for whatever they were working on, but at the same time had faith that there was a creator who set that, whatever it is, in motion.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we do know that there was some sort of Big Bang, but something had to provide the material and the cause for that. And the empiricist, the scientific community that rejects God, would say that there is a first cause, but then you have to invent things like dark matter to make it make sense.
Yeah, there can't be nothing. Like, everything can't happen out of nothing.
Correct.
I think it's like, well, how did that even work?
Yeah, in the way that explosions work, you have to have certain components for them to activate.
Yeah.
So if there's nothing or just raw material, there needs to be some sort of catalyst.
Right. And I think I just want to speak to the people who may be listening who are Christians, and they're like, wait a minute, what are you saying? I think this is why I want to double down on, I don't think the Bible and science are at odds.
Not at all.
And I think we can at least open up the conversation of, it's not that the Big Bang Theory, I think, which is a great show. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but oh, come on. Anyways, I think we can open up the conversation and not be completely staunchly against, no, I don't believe in the Big Bang because I believe in creation. It's like, okay, well, what if God created through this?
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Right.
And the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of the Lord was hovering over the waters. And the Lord said, let there be light.
And there was time.
Yeah. And if there was nothing, and then all of a sudden there's something, that sounds kind of like a Big Bang.
Yeah. I know that it can get touchy sometimes when you start mentioning that, and people can just immediately say, oh, you might be stepping into like woke theology or something like that. What would you say to somebody who came across?
I would say that let's define some things real quick.
Okay.
I would say there's three types of things that we will talk about on this show, and they kind of fall into three categories. And Brandon defines it as things to debate for, things to divide for, and things to die for. Right?
Yes.
The vernacular that I use is things that are written in blood, things that are written in pen, and things that are written in pencil. And so at the end of the day, like, things that are written in blood, things to die for, are things like Jesus is the only way to God, that the Trinity, the virgin birth, the crucifixion, the resurrection, all of these things are things that we should die for.
The things we would consider orthodox.
Yes.
Christianity.
No question. If you don't agree with these things, then you are not in the orthodoxy of Christianity.
Yeah, these are things that would be in the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed.
Yes. Now, things to divide for, or the things written in pen, would be things like interpretation of tongues, or spiritual gifts, or cessationism versus continuationism, or complementarianism versus egalitarianism, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So things that people have a strong opinion, and we can, disagree, but still be in Christian fellowship together.
Yeah. Yeah.
The things that are written in pencil or the things that we can debate for are more like this right here.
Yeah.
Did God use the Big Bang Theory to create the universe? Is a very pencil type
Yes.
deal.
Yeah.
Like me and Brandon are clearly on one side of the argument, and I know and love and respect people who are on the other side of the argument.
Oh, yeah.
So we're just presenting the teleological argument the way that we understand it here.
Right.
So if you don't agree with us, hey, that's fine. If you agree that Jesus is God and on the throne and ruling and reigning and returning one day to restore the world,
That's great.
we're on the same team.
Yep.
Absolutely. So
Yeah, I think it's important to state that because we can get into these, conversations. And I like to think through things like, could animals talk?
did Adam have a belly button?
Yeah. These are fun things, but I think sometimes people would just say like, oh, you shouldn't think about that. And I think part of what we want to do is, no, let's open up these
Yeah,
conversations.
this is a podcast about asking better questions of
Oh,
the
yeah,
Bible.
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. All right. So that is the cosmological argument. We've got more.
Yes, the second one is the teleological argument, which is one of my favorite. This is the argument from the perspective of intelligent design. So this
Amazing.
is think of God as a watchmaker. So
I do love watches.
yeah, so a watchmaker has to be very precise,
Very.
has to be very particular. And if you look at nature and humans and the way things are structured, the beautiful symmetry of the universe, like the likelihood that the universe would form on accident and we would form into carbon-based organisms
Mm-hmm.
is very small.
Yeah.
In fact, the likelihood that the universe would form the way that it has is the same mathematical probability of a tornado hitting a junkyard.
That's
And then,
wonderful.
yeah, and then as the tornado hits the junkyard, it builds a 747 that's fully operational.
Oh, that would be unique.
Yeah. And there's so much symmetry and beautiful precision between everything. Like if you look at the structure of an atom, and then you look at the structure of some of the largest galaxies that we have, there is this beautiful, beautiful comparison between the two. There is a purposefulness and a design in everything that we see in nature, and that is the teleological argument.
That's awesome. I think maybe this falls into this. Where I've not thought about this one as much, but I've had a lot of people talk about like using a laptop, for example, and just the intricacies of the laptop and how it's built and formed, and then saying, do you think that somebody created this?
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people, well, yeah, we know who created this. Apple did.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, so all the thought and stuff in there that went into it. And then saying, okay, what about our world?
Right.
And this isn't even trying to convince someone of the Judeo-Christian God, Yahweh. This is just to convince someone that there is a designer, an
Yes.
intelligent design behind our universe.
100%.
And it makes you think,
Mm-hmm.
I think, because when I sit there and think, I was like, okay, the argument of, and this could be maybe misrepresenting the other side of of people saying, well, it just came from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't naturally think that, but I've heard it said, well, just this was, like you said before, this is an accident. And, here we are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thankfully we're here.
You look at things like the water cycle and the seasons.
Yeah.
And the way that the moon is positioned on the earth and the earth is positioned from the sun and all this other stuff. And there is so much fine tuning
Yep.
that has occurred for life to flourish on this planet that I think the evidence is compelling for the teleological argument.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would be interested. I do read some science fiction, not some. I read a lot of science fiction.
Uh-huh.
And the idea of like terraforming worlds, I wonder how that would affect some people's,
Mhm.
thought if we could actually, I don't know if terraforming is real, a
Yeah.
real possibility, or if that's just truly science fiction. But the idea of like, what happens if we were to terraform the moon or
Mm-hmm.
Mars? And then I feel like that could be like, all right, so you see what we're saying? You know, like that's an interesting thought. I've never really thought about. I'm just,
Yeah. Well, we'll see what the government's about to say about aliens in the next couple of days.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. Moving on. What other arguments do we have?
The third is the ontological argument, and this was really presented well by Saint Anselm, and that's the idea that you know the reason that we think of things is that I don't. This is kind of hard to explain, but what is perfect to you, Brandon?
I feel like that's very subjective.
It is, but how would you define perfection?
Oh goodness. I mean, I guess it depends on what it is, but I could tell you.
Let me ask you this: have you ever seen anything that's perfect?
That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm a natural critic, so I find flaws in a lot of things.
Well, I'm a natural optimist.
Okay.
And I've still never seen anything that's perfect.
Oh, that's great.
But you can conceive of the idea of perfection.
That's true. Because I can look at something and I can see, man, this would be perfect if.
Right. So the idea that we can conceive of a perfect being, this argument would say, by the mere fact that we can conceive of a perfect being must mean that there is a truly perfect being that exists.
This one feels like a very heady argument.
This is a very philosophical argument.
Yes.
This would be like Barclay and crew would love discussing this. But yeah, the universal human understanding of perfection is a cross-cultural thing that is somehow built into all of us. We all have an understanding of perfection, even though this world has nothing that is perfect.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't taken. I do like to be philosophical, and I like to sit and think, but I don't know that I've ever really sat and thought about that too much. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to contemplate perfection for the rest of the day and think, do I know of anything that's perfect?
Yeah, I can't think of anything that's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, ready for number 4?
I am. This one is actually my favorite.
Really?
Yeah. I'll explain why after you say it.
So the moral argument, this is the shared consciousness argument, and this is the universality of moral truths, like the wrongness of murder or rape or anything like that. And I can already hear some of y'all pushing back and be like, well, what about the Nazis or what about whatever? And I would say that those people groups, it wasn't that what they were doing, they didn't think was wrong, is that their consciences had become so seared that they could enable themselves to do that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But cross-culturally, for years and generations, humanity has understood that murder and rape is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where you are, no matter where you come from, the necessity of dehumanizing others to bypass this natural conscience that's when it gets mixed up. We could point back to the Bible here, of the Bible being a book that elevates humanity, because in those situations, whether it's with Viking raids or Nazi imprisonment camps or what have you, you have to dehumanize,
Mm-hmm.
devalue
Mm-hmm.
the people that you're doing this to be able to do it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a huge C.S. Lewis fan. My favorite book that he's ever written was The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, because at the very end of that book, the way he uses words to describe what's happening is beautiful. Now, I'm a book lover. I love to read, but I have yet to find just a whole chapter of I was just blown away by the way he wrote. This also spills into a lot of his other books. The reason why I like this one so much is Mere Christianity starts out this way.
Mm-hmm.
This is how he starts his argument with the idea of a universal moral code that we all live under. And so he convinces you of this moral code, and then he convinces you that there's an intelligent design, because if there is a moral code that we all understand, there has to be something perfectly good outside of that to create that moral code.
Yeah.
And then he moves on to talk about how it's an intelligent designer.
Mm-hmm.
And then he moves on to talk about how that's the Christian God Yahweh.
Right.
And it was just like a beautiful, the way he structures it is just awesome.
Yeah. We love C.S. Lewis on this podcast.
Yeah. So good. Chronicles of Narnia, easily some of my favorite books.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think my next tattoo is going to be a lion head.
Yeah.
It's going to say Aslan's on the move.
Oh yeah. That's good. That's a good one. That's one of my favorite things to talk about with people. And most of the time when I am talking to people about that, I clarify, it's like, I'm not trying to convince you yet of the Christian God, Yahweh. Yep. I'm more just trying to set the stage and explain my worldview. Mm-hmm. I'm actually writing a blog post about this, about how important worldviews are.
He's writing it right now.
Right now as we speak. Yeah, I'm typing right now. We often forget that maybe not everyone has the same worldview. Mm-hmm. And so the moral argument for me is almost setting up the biblical worldview a little bit. Yeah. Of just like trying to get you like, okay, let me get you into the thought process of someone who is a Christian. Mm-hmm. Here's kind of how we're thinking. Mm-hmm. And if we think this way, this is why we have the same, we're moving to, getting to the idea of like, okay, if we believe that there's an intelligent design, then I believe that God created humans and we value human life. This is why I'm pro-life. Yeah. This is why I'm this way. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much that I'm even trying to convince the other person about those, things that have become politicized. It's just, let me explain to you why I believe what I believe. And it's not just me sitting here saying, I hate you, I'm going to think differently than you. It's like, no. There's a complete thought process.
Yeah, so good.
And I think I think something for Christians is we can look on the other side of that and say, well, let me listen to how you got to where you're at. Yeah. Because I think that there are worldviews that, we don't understand and we should work to understand. Yeah. And then we can help them see how, okay, I see your worldview. Let me explain how maybe Jesus would fit into that. And
yeah, as a tangent, we would all be better Christians and people if we would commit to listening to understand instead of listening to respond.
That's good. Yep.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Okay. You ready for the last one?
You got one more here.
This is my favorite.
Okay. So
this is the aesthetic argument. So, Brandon, let me ask you a question.
Yep.
Define beauty for me?
Ooh, I love this argument because is beauty in the eye of the beholder, or is there a natural like beauty that we can look at something? Mm-hmm. This is probably not even where you're going to go, but I love thinking about this because when you look at art, mm-hmm. and you see like, let's just, for example, a painting that has like 3 lines, mm-hmm. Really simple and stuff like that. And to some people that's art. Right. But then some people are like, okay, you're going to compare those 3 lines to Starry Night. Right. And I just love thinking about, is there a universal like level of beauty?
I would say yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because I don't know, when I'm driving from South Carolina to Tennessee. Yeah. And we get about the Asheville area and you start seeing the mountains rise up. Yeah. I've never met someone who's not like, wow, look at that. Okay. Or a sunset. Yeah. A sunset on the beach as the waves are cresting. Like, yep. That's all the beautiful reds and yellows and oranges that you see. Or, when you wake up in the morning in the mountains and you walk outside on your porch and the mist is rolling in. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yep.
Or, a field of flowers or...
Right. Yeah.
All of these things. But does that serve any purpose?
I mean, it just looks beautiful.
Right. There's no reason for it.
Yeah.
You think about the church that you and I worked at. It's, a great church. We love that church. But the buildings that they put up, most of them are big gray boxes. Yeah. Big gray boxes. Yeah. They're very functional.
Yeah. Very utilitarian.
But you walk into an Anglican church.
Oh, yeah.
And the beauty and the majesty, the reverence that's like surrounds the intricacy of the windows and the all of that is it strikes you differently than when you walk into a very functional space, right?
Yeah, and hear me. I'm I'm a minimalist. I love clean lines. I love the very mid-century modern aesthetic, and so for me, I I would prefer less. And I'll never forget Joni Ives from Apple whenever they came out with iOS 7, which was a terrible iOS, but the line that caught me was he said, "There's beauty in simplicity." But as much as I love that, there is this when you go into, and I was in Scotland for 6.5 months, so I got to see a lot of those ancient cathedrals that were built, before America was a thought, and you walk in and you're like, oh my goodness,
It almost takes your breath away.
yeah, the detail and the thought, and then you think, how did they do this hundreds of years ago? And the way that they cared about even just the way the building was structured. There was thought that went into that.
Yeah.
It is beautiful.
Yeah. So this whole idea of, beauty does not do anything.
Yeah. It just
the
is.
world could be black and white.
Yeah.
And still function the exact same.
Yeah.
And, food doesn't need to taste good.
That's true.
All this other stuff. So all these things that add really nothing practically, but add all these things that are just for us to enjoy, because God is an artist and God creates beautiful things for the sake of beauty.
Yeah.
And even if we look at the Bible is a work of literary art. He could have given us an instruction manual.
Yep. Very simple.
But instead, he gave us this beautiful 1,500-year-old narrative with multiple authors and this symmetry and poetry, and it's a beautiful thing. Like, God at some level values beauty, values wonder, and for me that is so compelling to think that if you look at a sunset and think that happened on accident, I just don't understand you.
Well, and what's interesting is I think I think I'm holding my phone right now looking at our notes, and I'm realizing that there is a little bit of beauty that's lost.
Yeah.
And this is another topic for another day probably, but I'm just sitting here thinking about the natural wonders of the world.
Oh yeah.
But then also, the architectural wonders of the world that we look at and we think how beautiful those are, or paintings and drawings. And when you can look at something and like a painting takes your breath away because you're like, oh my goodness, how did you do that? Or even just listening to music. I mean, there's other of the five senses. You were talking about food. Like you said, food can be utilitarian. The military does a great job at creating, what are they called? MREs or something?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And like it gets the job done, but there's something special about sitting at like I've never been to a Michelin star, restaurant, but I've got a few favorite restaurants here in Greenville. I sit down and I don't just eat the food to give me energy. I eat the food because it tastes good.
Oh yeah, I could eat a grilled chicken breast with no seasoning. And,
that's right, yeah,
and beans and celery and get all the nutrients I need for the day. But there's just something beautiful about a burrito the size of my head with.
Oh my goodness! You want to go to Moe's after this,
bro? Don't tempt me.
No, I think that we can lose beauty a little bit in our world of technology. Not that technology can't be beautiful, but it is something to say. You're talking about mountains, the sunrise, and I've heard of this trend. Maybe it's not a very big trend, but of people turning the color off on their phone, which I had done that for a while.
Yep.
So, and they also do it on your TV too.
Really?
Yeah. So you can. I've heard of this trend where people, especially with kids, they'll turn the color down. So there's still a little bit of color, but they turn it so it's kind of grayish looking.
Interesting.
So that the colors look more vivid in the world. And let me tell you, I'll never forget when I started to A, Sabbath, so taking a day to rest, but then B, I did that for a while, and I promise you that the trees got greener, the sky got bluer, and there would be moments where I would sit outside and just look at the sky and be like, it's so blue. I don't understand how it is so blue. Or look at the trees and be like, they're so green.
Yeah.
Like that's such a vivid green. Or looking at flowers and thinking like, how on earth? I mean, some of them are genetically modified, but how on earth is that flower that color? And it's so striking. And I think a lot of that came from, and hear me, I'm not anti-tech, but I think a lot of that came from me taking a break from technology a little bit. I don't know. That's a very compelling argument to me too, because I think just the evidence of beauty is, man.
Yeah, I love that. And, that's really the 5 arguments we're going to be circling around today. So the kind of the thing, the definition we're going to be working with theology for this series is that theology is faith seeking reason. And what I would encourage you to do is to, since this is about faith seeking reason, there's this thing called the shred. Have you heard of this, Brandon?
I have heard of this.
So the shred is 30 days through the Bible. Now, let me give you a couple caveats here. Number one, if you listen to it, that is fine. We're not asking you to sit down
and actually
read it. Yeah. Because we know that we live in 2026 and you're on the go. Number two, though, I will guarantee you will get a view of the beauty and the symmetry and the meta narrative of the Bible like never before. So, dropping the challenge right now. It is currently in our time back here in 2026. It is Friday, May 8th. So, by June 7th?
I have no idea. I'm not even going to try.
By June 7th or 8th, if you have the whole Bible read, we don't have anything to give you because I'm a church planner and we're not rolling in it. But
nope.
But we will give you kudos if you read the Bible in 30 days, and we'd love to talk to you about it. So you can send an email to us at hello@evergreentn.cc and let us know if you've done it. Yeah.
I think one of the cool things about doing something like the shred is you do get to see, going back to that whole, the aesthetic argument, you do get to see the overarching meta narrative of the Bible.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, we have a mutual friend who went through it, and he said after reading the Old Testament, as in such a short time, he said, I did not see a wrathful God, but I saw a God of compassion who was slow to anger. Because as I was reading through, I just noticed the amount of times that God was like, okay, I'll give you a second chance.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, let me, this prophet again, this prophet again, this prophet again. And that's interesting. I think that's, that's something worth noting. It is a lot to chew.
Yes.
But I would also encourage you, some next steps is to go and enjoy creation too. I think we're hanging on that that aesthetic argument a lot there, but faith seeking reason, take some time to think about some of these arguments. Which one is compelling to you? Which one do you want to dive into? Because I feel like there could be some people listening who are very scientific, and the whole oh goodness, what was the first one?
It is the cosmological.
Yeah, like the cosmological argument, or some people, the teleological argument. Those might appeal to you more than the beauty and the moral one. It really just depends. Some of you might be philosophical, and so the ontological one,
that might be your jam.
That might be your jam, and you might just want to sit down. So take some time, think about each of those.
Yeah,
and while you're shredding through the Bible.
Shred it.
Yeah.
And next week, we will look at the bibliological form of theology. So we're going to dive back into the Bible for a little bit. That'll probably be a shorter episode because we've already done a lot of work just on the reliability of the Bible, but we will expound a little bit on it next week.
Yeah, I think there's a difference. We'll probably bring this up next week, but the difference between a systematic theology and a biblical theology.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes what happens is if you start from a systematic approach, you can miss some of the things that the Bible talks about. So we want to make sure we start from a biblical approach.
Yes, and we want to make sure that we aren't placing our faith necessarily in the Bible, or we would worship the Bible. We place our faith in God because God is the center of our theology.
That's right.
Very good.
All right. Well,
thank y'all for listening.
yeah.
And we'll
see you next week. We won't see you, but we'll hear you.
You will hear us next week.
You'll hear us next week.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for listening to the Gospel and Grounds podcast. This is part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Our theme music was provided by the band Splitwave. And if you'd like to learn more about this podcast and others, you can visit evergreentn.cc. As always, we bless you to grow in the way of Jesus together.